Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Jude Hung. And Jude's going to be asking me questions today, right?
Yay.
Yeah. So, people that have
Yay.
listened might have heard of Jude before. I've interviewed her. She's interviewed me. She did a guest interviewing. She came up with some guests that she wanted to interview. She interviewed them.
Yeah.
And today, she's going to be interviewing me with basically around a summary of what I call fundamental wholeness. So that, that's that's the headline, right? Fundamental
Fundamental
wholeness.
wholeness. There you go.
Fundamental wholeness. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a topic that Simon and I have bounced back and forth for years, and we both wholeheartedly align on. And it will bring us to the discord around the primal wound or just trauma. In adoptee circles, we call our wounding the primal wound. It's a it's a metaphor, I guess, that or a term that really resonates within the community, but it is also a picture of any trauma, right? Because trauma is trauma. So, why do you think that the primal wound is not the correct term or is wrong, Simon?
Because I don't believe that trauma damages our fundamental wholeness. It doesn't incur into our fundamental wholeness. Trauma doesn't impact who we truly are. It's more like a veil uh, uh, on us than something that damages us. So trauma conceals us. It doesn't cut us. It uh, it hides us. It doesn't harm us. We are fundamentally whole, and that wholeness is hidden by our trauma.
Yeah, so I used to be a massage therapist, and the way that trauma works in the body, right? Like, so the trauma impacts our nervous system, and I'm thinking more of like an acute injury. Let's say you broke an arm or were in an accident, and so there's a physical trauma to the body. The fascia becomes kind of enmeshed like a spider web. It's very sticky and it gets very like enmeshed together. That's how it's also how we get scar tissue. And so that enmeshment, it causes a like a log jam in the body where there's not flow. And I see our trauma kind of like that. Like there's this log jamming, there's the veil, there's a buffer that keeps us from remembering our wholeness, right? It keeps us from knowing who we are. So that's just my little metaphor
Yeah.
through a physical
It's,
example. But yeah,
it's physical, but then again, we could say, right, I heard this. I heard this summarized beautifully by one of my mentors, a guy called Michael Neal. He said, "We have a body. We are not a body.
nope.
Our body isn't who we are. It's something that we have."
It's our earthen vessel, right? Like it's not who we are. It is what we live in. It's our container.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But that fascia is a great example of how trauma uh, acts for us, even like in our psyche or in our body, even though it's not who we are.
yeah. I mean, you could say trauma is retained in our body, but
Yeah.
but we are not our body. And if the body's broken, it's broken,
Yeah.
right? So if somebody
Yeah.
is blind, they can't see. But when we're talking about trauma. Trauma is more like a feeling that comes and goes.
Hmm.
So it's intermittent. Damage to the body,
Yes.
damage to the body is permanent. Trauma is largely a felt experience, and that's intermittent. It comes and goes. So it's
Yes. Especially when we're talking primal wound or that type of trauma, right? It's stored in the body, but it can also be released,
but it's not
right?
it's stored in the body, but but our feelings come and go. They come and go
Absolutely.
they come and go
Yeah.
in us. Something that straps in the body is permanently trapped in the body, but it's a constant thing. But trauma isn't constant.
No, it's not, right? It can be released. It can be moved. We can change our relationship with our emotions. We can change our relationship with our stories. We can change our relationship with the wound. And it's not who we are. I'll bring us back full circle. So why do you think that it resonates with so many adoptees, this
Because
wounding?
it puts words to it puts words to something that we feel. And it I interviewed a mentor of mine, a lady called Claire Diamond, about 4 years ago, and she said we've we've all got a primal wound to the extent that we believe that we are this apparently separate self.
Yes.
That is the primal wound of separation is a separation from our our believed separation from our wholeness. So that is a that is a human thing. So what the primal wound does, it takes something that is human and pathologizes it as something that is adoptee specific.
Yeah, I actually look at the primal wound or as an almost an archetypal journey. I think it's very human. Um, oh, I can never say his name right. Ty Nat. Like
Tick,
he has a
tick
quote that I
Nahar,
use. Uh,
tick Nahar, yeah.
I Yeah, he has a quote I use about like the illusion of separateness, and I do think that it is an archetypal journey that we go through in life, and we think that we're separate from everything, from even from our own selves. Uh, we think we're separate from the world. We think we're separate from nature, each other, when that's really all just an illusion.
Yeah.
And the wound, because everybody does go through wounding early in life, and they feel separate and become a separate entity from their mom, and um,
Well, you could say
and
physically, they are separated by you've had four boys, right? So
yes.
you could say we're separated from our mother by by the act of cutting the umbilical cord. That's a physical
Mhm.
separation. But what we're talking about later on is this emergence of the assumed separate self, which is, as you say, a human archetype. So what Nancy
Yeah.
Verrier does is she takes a she takes an archetype that is human and calls it something that is adoptee specific. And
Yes.
she's wrong.
Well, yes and no. I'm gonna play a little devil's advocate here because I think for me, I had been a massage therapist before coming out of the fog, as we like to say. And there was something powerful in being able to name the sensations that were in my body, to be able to point to, this is a remembrance record of something of an experience, right? It's not who I am, but there is a remembrance record looping over and over and over again. And I think it was really important for me to be able to name it, to stop the looping. It was telling me a story of something that happened to myself that I didn't recall. And so by naming it and being able to see the narratives that I had adopted, right? Because of an experience that I couldn't recall and made up all these stories about myself that weren't true. Um, I could undo, I could unravel that. And, I came out of the fog in 2019 and I started feeling whole by 2021. Right. So that was like my spiral of growth. But I needed to like see it to be able to release it, to recognize that it wasn't who I was, right? My trauma bound identity, as I like to call it, like that was not who I was. And I migrated, through those years toward being me and feeling whole and practicing what I would call my sovereignty. So I think by naming it, that was for me, it was an important step of being able to release it and move beyond that part of the journey instead
Me
of
too.
being stuck in the loop
Me
physically
too.
with it. Yeah.
Me too.
But but it's also not correct in that I was identified with my wound. I had this trauma bound identity. I had identified with it, and that was not correct in that sense. Right. I wholeheartedly agree with you. So some people would say that you and I are denying our trauma. Are you denying your trauma?
No, no, I'm just saying that I'm not my trauma. We are not our
Yeah.
trauma. The trauma that we
So
feel isn't who we are.
no. And so would you, are you minimizing your pain, or what happens when the trauma loop does play for you?
I'm less bothered by it than I
Yeah.
used to be. If we're okay with feeling okay, we're always okay.
Y- Yes. And when things come up, we're okay with that too, I think. Right? It
Less
changes,
less okay with it, less bothered by it. It depends.
less bothered with it. Yeah.
Less bothered by it.
Yeah. And in my experience, I'm curious if this is your experience also, is, you know, it doesn't really come up anymore. I noticed that it became less and less. And um, here we are on April 17th,
17.
and I've not had anything come up since Christmas. And Christmas, my is a little bit more of an intense time. Um, it came up for me a little. I recognized it immediately. I went to my amazing, lovely husband and said, "Hey, some stuff's coming up, and I could really use a hug." And he hugged me, and then it was fine. Like, so that's my experience at this point. But largely, it doesn't come up at all. How about what is your experience at this point in your life, Simon?
Similar to you, if it comes up more rarely. It's more like as you know, the irony here is that we we came we were brought together by um, the lady that runs Fireside, Amanda, to run a on the back of on the back of an idea to run a course on a new
On the
metaphor
primal wound.
for the primal wound. And here we are. We've been talking about that for the last 3 years, and here we are talking about it again. So here's the metaphor, right? So I don't know if you've ever been knocked over by a wave.
By a what?
By a wave. Have you been in the sea and been
Oh,
knocked out?
yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
have you ever been spun around by a wave? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So that's what trauma feels like when we're in the middle of it. What we're talking about here is more like we're riding the wave rather than it feeling engulfed by it and powerless.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a really great metaphor because what came up for me and how I described it to Jeff was, hey, for whatever reason, because I wasn't even really sure, my nervous system is starting to feel a little dysregulated. Right. That's how I'm describing it because that's what's happening in my body. And I could really just use a hug and then I'm going to go be quiet for a few minutes and I'll come back and join everybody. And that's what I did. Right. So it wasn't, oh, my trauma wound showing up again or my adoption trauma or any of this. It was, oh, I'm feeling a subtle shift in my nervous system. And I know where that can go if left unchecked, right? So let's just bring it back into alignment and I just need to regulate for a second and do that. So it is much more like riding the wave instead of being carried under into a current and down under. Yeah, that's a great metaphor. Um, so if adoptees are whole, then why do so many of us struggle so much? You and I both know the statistics
Yeah.
and we've been in groups. We know the struggle is real and we're not trying to minimize that.
We think our feelings are permanent
Mm.
and we don't see our wholeness. And we've lost hope and other
Mm.
people around us uh, are are validating the way that we see the world. The bleak dark future that we see is being mirrored by other people in our circle.
Yeah. So do you think some of the feelings of permanence relate to the fact that we've carried these emotions in our bodies since very early? And so it's like we don't know ourselves without these feelings.
Well, no emotion is permanent. I think what I said was we think that the feelings are permanent, but they're not permanent. Feelings come and go. Feelings come
Yes,
and
they
go
do.
in feelings come and go in us. So it's a bit like the external weather and the internal weather, right? So we've talked a lot about this idea as trauma as a storm, but storms
Yeah.
pass.
Yes.
Storms pass, and internal storms pass as well. And so anything that is any feeling that is intermittent cannot be who we are because who we are is permanent. It's permanent. The sky is always there, but it's
Mhm.
sometimes hidden by by the storm. We're
Yeah.
always there, but sometimes our essence is hidden by our internal storm, our trauma. Trauma comes and goes, and then anything that comes and goes cannot be essential to us, as in it can't be the essence of what we are. That's what I say. Talk about fundamental wholeness. I could also talk about essential wholeness. I could also talk about the
Hmm.
wholeness in our core. These are all
Yes.
pointers to who we truly are. The sky that is the constant background to the ever changing weather.
Yes. And when we have the experience of a trauma, like you said, it's a veil, right? It's a buffer, but I like the veil, and I'm going to use that metaphor right now. It becomes the weather system. Like, let's say oh, I'm living in a desert and the weather's not changing very much, because by the time I came out of the fog, I had spent many years fairly depressed. And I thought that was who I was. So there was this forgetting of my essence, right? Forgetting of my wholeness and identifying with the wound even before I could name it.
Yeah,
So in my mind, that was most of my feelings were very low frequency, low level um experiences, a lot of fear, right? Like so that was I had not built a capacity for higher states of being. I was living in low frequency feelings. So that was my permanent kind of state of being. And every once in a while, I might have a sunny day. Every once in a while, I might, you know, feel light. But for the most part, I was in these lower levels. And I think that is, part of that struggle too. And so that remembrance and building capacity to hold the higher states of being is part of the process toward unveiling our wholeness.
yeah.
Um,
We get very
so
confused. We get very confused. We
yes,
say I feel we say I am scared or I am terrified rather than I
yes,
feel terrified. So, but
yeah,
how
on
we
the nose,
feel isn't who we are.
who we are. Yeah,
How can something that is intermittent be be we've all got that sense of who we are, and that's permanent. So how
hmm
can be something how can something that is intermittent, even if it is very recurrent, like a feeling, like
yeah,
a low feeling, how can something that is intermittent be something? Um,
because we identify with it. That's why it's the I am part that you're saying, and that's what people tend to do. And then once they identify with it, you have to break down that narrative and break down the
well, we
identity
say it all day, don't we?
and shift it.
We say it all day. We say it all day long.
Right. But you and I say
I
what?
am.
I'm whole. I'm sovereign. I'm whole. I'm well. Right. We have a different state of being at this point.
Yeah.
Um, so what do you see about adoptees that no one else is saying?
That we are fundamentally whole. Everybody is fundamentally whole. Vladimir
Yeah,
Putin,
absolutely.
Donald Trump, fundamentally whole.
Absolutely. They are. So what's your alternative?
Fundamental wholeness.
Okay. So what do you mean by that? Wholeness.
I mean the kids game rock paper scissors is my kind of best metaphor, I think, for this. Yeah,
Okay.
rock paper scissors. So the the scissors can't cut the rock. The rock wins against the scissors, but the rock only loses if it's covered by the paper.
hmm
So unfolding the paper reveals our fundamental wholeness.
Okay. I love that because I think that tell me more about this unfolding the paper. I want to
Unfolding
hear
the
what you have
paper.
to say.
Well, so unfolding the paper is looking underneath our feelings, looking underneath our trauma. So if we talk about trauma, we think of trauma as, we think of it as a thing. I'm calling it a thing
Hmm
by saying it's like paper that covers the rock.
Yeah.
but it isn't a thing. It's largely it's a feeling. It's a feeling of terror. It's a feeling of insecurity. It's a feeling of shyness. It's a feeling of anger. It's a feeling of fury. So it's
It's a nervous system activation.
it's a whole body.
It's
It's
a
a
whole
whole
body
body.
experience.
It's a whole
Yeah.
body. It's a whole body experience. But it comes and goes. So
Hmm.
other than like you can say rock paper scissors, and then we can go back to the sky metaphor as well. And maybe those two metaphors for me are the strongest one because the sky is never changing. The weather is
Hmm.
ever changing. It's a bit like our feelings. Our feelings are ever changing. What they are feeling, what they are arising and falling in is our essence. They're the constant background that is we're the constant background that is veiled by the trauma, by
The
the
trauma.
feelings.
So, but in the body, right, the trauma has like an energetic charge. It does get stuck in the body and it is on a loop, right? Like in that something can activate the nervous system and bring that loop up to play again. So, but you and I have both described an experience. So we know that it is possible because you and I both have had it where that's happening less. And when it does happen, it is less strong. It's not a wave that's tackling us, right? It's a wave we can ride. Um, so I call that like instead of healing, I call it resolving. I have resolved my trauma. I've worked through the narratives, right? Like I've recognized that these feelings are just feelings, that it's nervous system activations, right? That this is not my state of being. And, it took me just a little time. It took me 3, 4 years to get to wholeness. So what for you got you, like, did you have some aha moments? What shifted for you in
It's all
identifying
it's
to
all
wholeness?
aha moments. People say that this is my favorite, one of my favorite ones, right? People say that time is the greatest healer. Well, if there's no change, there's no healing. So
Right.
what is the greatest healer, right? Nobody's asking that question, right? Nobody's challenging the the cliche. Nobody's challenging the belief. Time's the greatest
Hmm.
healer. Well, it's not. So what is? Well, aha moments are insights are new ideas that come to us out of the blue. To use a religious word, epiphanies are, right? So
Hmm.
you've got insights, shifts in our perspective, aha moments, um, blue sky thinking, fresh ideas, insight. They're all
Yeah.
they're all synonyms, words that mean the same, or sinophores, right? Metaphors that mean the same. And my favorite one is kind of insight, but sometimes insight feels a little bit heady to me, right? An insight is
Uh-huh.
something that happens in our head. The word epiphany feels bigger for me because like
Right.
an epiphany is a whole body
Hmm.
experience. So it's not just something that
Yes.
an insight that we see with our eyes, or a change in belief that goes on in our head, or even something that we get in our heart, right? A change of our feelings. It means a whole body, a whole body experience. So my
Yeah.
biggest whole body experience was reading this letter from my birth mum, feeling her pain, feeling her love for me, realizing that 20 seconds of fear towards her, 20 seconds that I felt that she was rejecting me was complete and utter BS. And it was a full body experience. I was crying. I was crying,
Yeah.
and the tears kind of washed washed the trauma away. They washed the beliefs away.
Yeah.
It's a whole body experience. So it's not just a nice new idea, right? It's like,
No, yeah.
right, we can glimpse our wholeness, we can see our wholeness, we can have a change of heart, or we can have a change of who we are. We can have a change of the world, right? So
Yeah.
not all insights are created equal. Some of them are far more profound than others.
Absolutely.
Now, all the other insights that I have and continue to have over the last 19 years looking at this stuff, none of them have the kind of the visceral, tangible, easily explicable, get by other people
Hmm.
substance that that particular insight has. But we've all had insights.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like synchronicities. For me, that the symbolism that life or the field will play with me and give me messages through symbols. And I love that because there's a lot of condensed information in a symbol. And so it comes and then it like unpacks and unfolds, and it has so much more meaning and creates a lot of change, like a ripple of change in me. I want to unpack your epiphany just a little bit because I feel like it could give a little helpful insight. Um, so that came to you very specifically from your mom, right? So the wounding seemingly from her, right? Believe of rejection, right? And then reading this, it was undoing that code, let's say,
Yeah.
of wounding. Because now you kind of could download this and your body had like a very visceral physical release. And crying is very much like a solvent that softens and can help us release the trauma energy. And it caused like a huge shift for you in how you saw yourself, like your whole identity shifted. So I think for you, like that was kind of that trauma bound identity leaving behind moment, like
And
what I
look,
had, you know.
there've been loads of those moments, but that's the most
Yeah,
powerful,
profound.
profound,
Yeah,
profound. It's profound is French for deep, right? So and it must come from Latin, profound. I know. Anyway, so deep. It's a whole body experience. It's an epiphany. It's far more powerful than a light bulb moment.
absolutely. So what becomes possible when an adoptee stops identifying with being wounded?
Well, this isn't just for adoptees, right?
No, this is, like I said, archetypal. So yeah,
It's like
what becomes possible when we let that go and we
well,
don't identify with it?
I don't think I let it go. I think it was let go for me.
Hmm.
So we see our wholeness. I thought that I was
I would say resolve. That's my favorite word. Like when I resolve that, right? Like that piece of my identity. But when we're able to stop identifying, sorry, because I just want to clarify for anybody that's listening, when we're able to stop identifying with being wounded, what's possible? There we go.
peace,
Yeah,
causeless joy,
it's true.
happiness,
True.
oneness.
Yeah. I mean, do you ever feel like, because sometimes I feel like this, I have actually felt guilty in adoptee circles for feeling so good
Yeah, I feel that. Do I feel guilty?
sometimes.
I I uh,
Not very
I
often, but sometimes.
I was chatting to an adoptee in Kansas, I think, earlier this week, and she said, uh, you know, I told people that I was adopted, and there was like an expectation that that I should be really messed up.
Yeah. There are a lot of
So
stories out there. You see that in movies and books, right? The adoptee has to go through all this stuff.
it's like their pathologization, if that's a word, right? Their
Yeah.
pathologization encourages us to self-pathologize, like
Hmm.
Nancy Verrier did.
Yeah.
She she assigned a human archetype to the fact of being adopted.
Yeah. Well, one thing, the orphan child archetype, when it overcomes that story arc of the wound, becomes the magical child. They step into their power. So I put that out there just as anyone, if anyone's interested in archetypes and narratives and story, that is the arc for the orphan wound is you become magical and powerful. You
Yeah,
know who you are, become whole. You feel good. Step into a realm of possibilities, right? Like I think what became possible for me was that I could feel good about my life, which I never thought I would feel good. Um, what became possible for me was to have a relationship that is partner like a partnership. It's power with it is not because I had a previous marriage that was very dysfunctional and I was codependent, right? Like and I didn't know that I could have a healthy relationship. And so to be able to step into that and really like enjoy it feels good. Like and to um be living for myself, right? Where I was always in service before. So those are things that I didn't think were really possible for me in this lifetime that I'm living, like I really enjoy my life and in the peace. I think, well, I mean, I know that trauma dynamics can cause like a lot of drama. Drama causes drama, and and to have just a really steady life for a while, I thought something was a little bit wrong with me. I was like, am I like numb? Like because things were so calm, you know. But then I realized like that this is a good thing. Like
yeah,
I'm good. Yeah,
yeah. As a mentor of mine, Richard Wilkins says, high tide and low tide are just no, happiness, sadness are just high and low tides on a big sea called contentment.
yeah. Big C called contentment.
But we're not talking like if you look up at the sky on a day where there's not completely overcast, you kind of could be forgiven for thinking that blue blue there's a blue cloud there,
Mm,
right? So the blue cloud would be happiness, and the grey cloud would be sadness or trauma, right? And we think
yeah,
that they're intermittent, but I'm not talking about what's intermittent. I'm talking about the sky that's the constant background. I'm not talking about a
yeah.
happiness that comes and goes. I'm talking about a
No,
happiness or a peace that's all peace peace that's always there. But the peace that's
yeah,
always there is usually or often drowned out by the often drowned out by the trauma. So it's a bit like in an
yeah,
orchestra where the guy with the triangle his little ping of the triangle is is drowned out by the woman with the double bass and the guy with the drums and the musical instruments, other musical instruments, the horn
yeah,
section.
yeah. Yeah, I guess I would describe like I just feel very grounded, right? Like I am very grounded in just peace,
But this isn't
calm, like you
adrenaline
said.
fueled happiness. This isn't adrenaline fueled happiness or
Hold on.
um, hugeness. It's it's more like peace and contentment.
Yeah. And it's not bypassing either, uh, which I think some people would say, oh, they're just, spiritually bypassing. I would say like the trauma was like static on my radio, and we're not broken. We've just been tuned to the noise for a really, really long time. And so it's been a process of turning that dial and just shifting it back and forth and tuning in to my original broadcast and aligning with that.
Or the silence behind the static.
Or the silence behind the static.
It's always
Yeah,
there. It's always there. It's
it's
just
always
round there.
there. Yeah, it was always there. The noise was just
Like the
loud.
drama, right? Yeah. So the drama of the TV show or the film, whatever, right? It
Hmm.
it veils the piece of the screen.
Yeah,
And when we
yeah.
switch the television off, right, or when the yeah, when the when the television goes goes switch off, and and then there's peace. It's disconcerting. So that's what it was. What was happening for you? The absence of the drama felt
Strange.
disconcerting.
It was just like, wait, is everything all right? Like, I'm not used to this quiet.
Yeah,
And
but
then I
all
got
the
very used to it.
yeah, but all
Now
the
I
time.
protect that.
Yeah, but all the time all the time even in our darkest days, there are when we glimpse the moments when we glimpse the sky, metaphorically, right? Where
Mhm.
sometimes, so we're walking and we're walking in nature, and the beauty of a yellowhammer that we see on the hedge takes our breath away, or we
Mhm.
we come round a corner on a trail and the sky opens up, and it takes our breath away, or we're listening to a piece of music, and that takes us to the peace. All the time, or even in our darkest days, there's those intermittent uh, sightings of those intermittent moments of our clarity.
Mhm.
But we think that this is a good thought or a good feeling replacing a bad one, rather than the constant background to our life.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like we flip-flop it and we think, oh, the good feeling's the fleeting thing, not the permanent thing, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Flip
Yeah.
flop. That's a good word.
Yeah. I know that you work with like adoption professionals and parents. So how would adoptive parents and professionals work differently if they saw adoptees as whole, right? Like you're saying how they adoptees have kind of been pathologized. So how do you think they could work differently from this premise of wholeness that would be supportive for adoptees?
Well, I would say that they need to seek their own wholeness first, and
Mhm.
then see that adoptees share their wholeness too.
Yeah, I think that is really wise. I know my parents were not operating from a place of wholeness, my adopted parents. And like you and I said at the very
But
beginning, that's
who
right. This
is?
is a
It's a
human
minority. It's a minority
condition.
sport.
yeah, yeah, this is a human condition issue, not s- something that adoptees have cornered the market on. And
No, we do not have a monopoly on trauma
no,
or
no.
low self-worth.
Yeah, and I do think had my parents been in a place of wholeness, what would have shifted? They would have been able to regulate their nervous systems and emotions, which they didn't. And that would have taught me how to regulate my nervous system and emotions, right? Because there's a coherence that happens when we live with others, we sync up, and they could have, um, through coherence, through resonance, my right, raise my frequency and my state of being just through that, just by them holding a state of wholeness.
Yeah. So as I say, like you know this, and I don't know about everybody listening to the podcast, and not a lot of people listen to this podcast, right? This is a minority sport, right? Most people,
Yeah,
thriving is a minority interest, right? Most people are doing trauma education. They're not doing thriving education,
absolutely true.
or they're doing trauma bonding. They're not doing thriving bonding. This is a minority sport, and I've only reached. That's the lesson that I keep on getting more and more. Right, that's the lesson that I
Yes.
keep on getting more. Being okay with it being a minority sport. Being okay, because I want to change the world, right? So when
Yes.
I look at my numbers, I think 136,000 downloads in 5 years, 650. It's terrible, right? You know that the voice in my head says you should be reach that you should have more downloads than this. You know, right? So, uh,
Mhm.
but being okay with it being a minority sport, being okay with it reaching the people that it needs to reach, being okay with
Yeah.
maybe the conversation actually is just about me and that other person that I'm interviewing. Maybe it's just about that and
Yeah.
not giving two figs about the listener numbers, right? This is a minority sport.
Yeah. It is. It is. And I sometimes have that same tape playing in my head around my work. And I have pulled back and kind of been on pause for just over a year, right? And I notice now that I'm writing again and posting, like the interaction is like nil. And my stuff is not as trauma centric because of where I'm at. I'm, talking other things. And so yes, it's a minority sport. And it is exactly what the world needs
Unfortunately,
right now as we are shifting. And I'll share this, like I believe I know I told you about like my near death experience, and when I was brought out into space and I was looking down on the earth, there were these little pinpoints of light, and they would pull up and be like a little movie screen playing, and I would see what was happening there. And then it would turn and I would see another one, and they got faster and faster, but eventually this was the message of that part of my near death, was that everything we do, everything we say, everything we think matters, and it's impacting stuff all around the world. And so I have to remind myself of that a rock tossed in the pond, it may seem like it's not doing very much, but it is rippling out. And so there's a trust. I've gotten so much closer with my soul through all of this, that like I trust the leading of my soul around my purpose. And if it is if my writing, if you're speaking is really just for me and clearing my signal, right? Like clearing the static of this lived experience so that my soul can shine more brightly and be more coherent and be at a higher frequency, that's rippling out and impacting the entire planet. And that might sound woo, but it is physics and I believe it. So, so so that, yeah, if it's just that, if I'm just downloading a template for moving from trauma-bound identity to earth-bound sovereignty and wholeness, and then so be it. Now, I would love to bring others along as you would, right? Like we want it to ripple out. We want people to feel well because a lot of the damage that we're seeing done in the world is the result of what we're talking about. It's the result of people acting out of the trauma that they're holding in their bodies and identifying with instead of identifying with their wholeness, because people who feel good and whole treat other people well,
Yeah.
right? People who are
Did
empowered empower others.
did did well, I'm sure this is a very leading question, right? Did your near-death experience convince you without a shadow of a doubt that you're not your body?
Not at the time. That it actually came through a meditation experience, and it was almost an existential crisis when I realized that I was not my thoughts, I was not my feelings, I was not this body. And I all of a sudden was in this place of like witness, sovereign observer. And yeah, it was an existential crisis that led me out of Christianity because I was deep within Christianity at that point. So yeah,
Because
multitude of
like
experiences.
so I think that that people, I can say we're not a body. A body is something that we have, not something that we are. And people can say, well, that's fine for you, Sam, and you're off your nut.
Yeah.
But people that have had NDEs, you have floated up there. How many stories have we heard of people that are on the operating theatre
Mhm.
and they leave their body and they're in the
And they're
top
looking.
in the
Yeah.
top gun looking down, right? So that's NDEs. And what about Eben that you interviewed for the
Yeah.
podcast, right? As a
Yeah.
neuroscientist,
Yeah. If you
neurosurgeon.
haven't heard that, go listen to it if anybody's
Eben
listening to us.
Pagan. Eben Pagan? No? Eben Pagan?
Oh, even Alexander.
Eben Alexander. Okay, right. Who's Eben Pagan? Right. So it's a hardcore uh, neurosurgeon. I'm reading a book by another neurosurgeon at the moment, and similar sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, and he says that uh, they can't find reason, the reasoning part of the brain. They can't find the reasoning part of the brain.
Right. Because
It's not in the brain.
it's not in the brain. So like it's not.
They can they're doing this for I don't know 100 years. They've been splitting our hemispheres, cutting the
Yeah,
corpus
yeah.
callosum between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. They
Oh,
don't get two people. It's still one person.
yeah.
You
And
should have two.
well,
If we are our brain, if we are our personality, we should be. There should be two people
and
in there. There's not. There's
yeah,
just one.
and yeah, and a lot of people in the fields that I operate in, like we call it the mind body, because although we separate the brain extends into our nervous system. Like there's really no separation of anything. It's and our memories aren't even stored up in there. They're stored in the body. It's and now they're talking about that it's stored out in the cloud. Like our memories are not even in our body. It's out in the cloud in the field. So there's a lot of science that's shifting around these things. And I think I did know that I wasn't my body, but I had like another experience that really like brought that home through that meditation. And um, you know, that's why I just call this my earthen vessel. Like this is what holds the light. And I'm glad to be in it for now, but it's not who I am.
Yeah.
So
You don't people that People that have that, so that makes you the light.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the light doesn't need enlightening.
No, it absolutely
Trauma
does
and
not.
darkens. Trauma and darkens the light. There's no dimmer switch.
It
There's no
covers
dimmer
it.
switch on the light.
No, but I'll go back to my Christianity. Jesus said, "Don't hide your light in a bushel." He was right, and I think that's exactly like what trauma does. It just covers it up, and we begin to identify with
It
it
doesn't
instead of
break
our
the light
light.
bulb. It doesn't break the light
No,
bulb.
no,
It doesn't
no,
fuse the electricity.
no. It doesn't change us at all.
It
If
just
and
hides us.
it's if anything, it's actually they're gonna get me for this one. It's actually kind of this beautiful um, seed, seed that the trauma like compacts all this information with it, and as the seed unravels, right, we are learning from it, right? Because because I came out of the fog, because I decided to resolve my trauma and that I discovered and came to remembrance of home is here inside this body while I'm here on earth. But there's a remembrance of home is who I am, right? It's a frequency. It reminded me of my sovereignty, of my wholeness. So that whole like story arc, if we want to think of it that way, brought me to uncover and remember who I am.
I,
That
I,
journey.
I saw a snail yesterday. It reminded me of you and your home program, right? Because a snail takes his home with him,
Yes.
or her,
And
or
I like
they.
the snail. I have a snail sticker on my computer I'm looking at right now. But I like the snail, right, because it does have its home with it, but it also has a spiral of growth on it. And we can only go the pace of our most tender parts. And so we each have our own pacing of recognizing that home's right here and our wholeness. We're good. Yeah. So, um, yeah, I'm trying to think. There is one more question on this list. You want to go for it or
Of course.
okay. So you're not a psychologist or a therapist. So what gives you the right to say what you are saying, connecting to the threads in this interview? Yeah.
It's just
Like
my opinion. It's just my opinion. It's just my experience. It's just what I'm reporting back.
that, and that's what makes you the authority is this is your lived experience. And therefore you know it to be true. The fruit is in your life.
Is that the mic drop moment?
I guess so.
Thanks, listeners. Bye bye.